All right.
All right, good afternoon. This is the library's class on essentially staying safe online. So we have been doing this for 5 or 6 years now. And if you have signed up, you'll get a link to the slides and also a link to the saved recording. One of the nice things about the slides is the next time we do this class, you will also, if you just check back in a year, you'll also see the updated slides whenever you click on the link from this class. This is a long one, so bear with me. There's a large section of this that is mostly for your reference for after the class is over. So the number of slides are not the number of slides we'll actually talk about today. The reason why we do cyber awareness in October is because it is Cyber Awareness Month. And this was set in 2004 when the President and Congress declared October to be Cybersecurity Awareness Month. There are also a lot of tools that are available during this month and like little programs you can go through. And we have links to a lot of those in this presentation. And you can click on them and kind of learn more. One shout out is KnowBe4. So this is a company that basically started as a way to phish or test yourself against phishing attacks or test your organization against phishing attacks. And one of the things that they do very well is they record little videos, and they also have kind of a week by week thing you can click on for like little fun activities. They also have posters if you're into that sort of thing, but we'll have a link to that in this presentation as well. And that would be something you can do after the class, and then you can come by on Wednesday and ask me about it if you so desire. This is just a slide I threw in there just to show you that if you want to be quote unquote a cybersecurity professional, that is generally 4 years of undergrad and 2 to 4 years for a master's, and then a lifetime of continuing education. This is partially here just so you don't think that you need to know all of this stuff. People spend their entire lives dedicated to just one aspect of being safe online or cybersecurity. So this isn't something that you need to feel weird about not knowing. That's also one of the reasons why the library has the Wednesday noon to 1:30ish, where you can drop in and ask any questions you desire. And in case you're wondering, I don't get paid this much, so don't worry about that. All right. First of all, generally in the news, you'll see something about this breach happened at Home Depot, or this breach happened at Amazon, this breach happened at Instagram. And the reason why companies should care about making sure they're safe is just the fines that are levied whenever they're insecure with their data. This is a quick look at some of the fine amounts. You'll notice they sometimes reach into the billions, but generally they're in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. So whenever you see a breach that's reported on the news, you'll also generally see an accompanying fine later on. One of the negative things about this situation is it kind of de-incentivizes corporations from being proactive about notifying you about a breach. So oftentimes you'll get an email from, let's just say Yahoo, and say, hey, you've been in a breach, and they detected the breach 5 months ago, because it takes them a long time to gather all the evidence, send it to their lawyers, and make sure that they're not able to be sued before they actually send out an alert. This is just some stats. Probably the one thing that should be a takeaway from this slide is cybercrime is up 600% after COVID-19. It's gotten far more popular. And also that 75% of security professionals consider social engineering the most dangerous threat. So social engineering is kind of not even technical related. It's more of the, hey, click on this link, or hey, I'm going to give you a phone call. I'm from your bank. Please give me your account information so I can help you out. So generally be incredibly sure that you're talking to the right person whenever you're on the phone or through email. Also, this is the more technical side, but what can happen to your computer? Well, your computer can get malware on it. And a couple different types are viruses, worms, trojans, spyware, and ransomware. You don't necessarily need to know the difference between all of them, but I have a tiny little description under each one. But they're all bad, and most antivirus applications or anti-malware applications will try and get rid of those for you. And later on, we have a list of different applications you can use for this process. This is a quick kind of infographic from KnowBe4 on the 10 or the top clicked phishing things that they sent out. And by far the most clicked were from LinkedIn. So I will just shorten that to social media. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, that sort of thing. A lot of people know that it's how people connect with their friends, stay connected with family. So they will send emails to people for Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, asking you to click on it to view a post or change your password, update your password, anything of that nature. And you just want to be very careful because those are the links that that are most profitable for the people who are sending them. Do we have any questions about this slide or anything we've talked about so far? Perfect. All right. One of the first things you can do to be safer online is just look at your own behavior. And don't worry, this isn't a personal attack. I have to go through this list myself all the time. One example of bad behavior is forgetting to log off. This is most important if you're in a company or something of that nature, but it's also pretty important if you are using a public computer like what's available in the library. If you sign into your email account on a public computer and you just walk away, you're still signed into your public email account. The next person who walks up can interact with that, send emails, send messages, receive stuff, all of that. The next thing is poor password management. We go over that a little bit later, but essentially, if you don't have good passwords or you reuse passwords, the reason why reusing passwords is so bad is if you are involved in a data breach, they may get your password to your Home Depot account. That's not too bad, but if you use the same password for your, for your Fidelity account or TD Bank as you use for Home Depot, now all of a sudden they have the ability to log into your TD Bank or Fidelity or any number of other services. The next thing is failure to create backups. While this isn't necessarily a how to stay safe online step, it's just something that you should also be checking. This is basically if a piece of malware or something you click on infects your computer to the point where your computer becomes inoperable, you want to make sure that you have all of your files backed up. So if you lose your computer, you don't lose all of your information. The next thing is whenever you see that, and if you're a Mac user, it's in the top right. If you're a Windows user, it's in the bottom right. Oftentimes a little thing will pop up saying, hey, we found updates. Do you want to apply them for Windows or Mac respectively? And you just hit ignore because you don't want to restart your computer at that moment, and you keep hitting ignore, that's bad. You want to, at least whenever you see that message, feel free to ignore it at that moment, but then later that night or whenever you're not doing anything on the computer, make sure to apply the updates. Next thing is just clicking on things. If you browse the web and you click willy-nilly on any link that pops up, you might hit a bad one at some point. You have to be right 100% of the time. They only have to be right once, is essentially the motto for that. And the next thing is if you don't have alerts set up. So this is less of a thing now. Normally, alerts are just automatically turned on whenever you create an account. But for example, you'll get an alert if you have too many failed login attempts for your Home Depot account. If you don't look at those alerts or don't listen to them, that could mean that someone is actively trying to log in as you for a service online. Different types of attacks. So there are way more than this type of attacks that are trying to get your information. The first one is spam bomb. All that means is it just keeps bombarding you with messages, hoping you'll click on one of them eventually, either by accident or just to get them to stop. These will be things like, hey, click on this message to stop receiving alerts, for example. And after 100 alerts in an hour, you might be tempted to click on that to stop the influx of messages. The next thing is two-factor authentication. When possible, you should always use two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Basically what that is you need a password that you remember or is kept in your password manager. And then you also will need a device that is kept on your person in order to log into an account. Generally, this would be your phone. What this does is even if someone has the ability to find your password and know it, if they go to log into an account that you have two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication turned on, they will not be able to log in because they lack that second piece of information. The third type is web defacement. Again, this is less important now. Most modern browsers try and save you from this. But if you mistype Amazon's name, for example, and you have two A's in Amazon, there could be someone who buys that domain, copies Amazon's page, and then you're browsing what you think is Amazon. You buy items, you put in your credit card info, but you're actually not on Amazon. The fourth one is phone mom. This is a link. This is one of my favorite videos for this. And it essentially shows how someone can get your password and account information for your cell phone with absolutely no information. And it's fun. When you're at home, feel free to click on it and watch it. It's kind of scary how convincing this lady is when she's doing it. Next one is more of a business one. CEO wants something. We businesses have been a part of experience this one a lot. It essentially will say this is an email from the CEO or administrator or department head or something of that nature, and it will say, hey, the department head wants you to click on this link and buy this product, or hey, they want you to, for some reason, gift cards are still a thing, but they want you to buy $100 worth of gift cards and reply back with the code for it. Just remember what's written just below. Your email is not an emergency. If you get an email that you feel requires you to immediately click on it, those are the emails you should be most suspicious of. You can always take 5 minutes and double check that it's a real email. Any questions on different types of attacks? Cool. All right. Software firmware updates. We had briefly discussed this, but updates are probably like the easiest and most important thing you can do for security. And on the right-hand side, I have an example of this. If you're old like me, you may remember WannaCry, partially because it had a catchy name, but it was one of the earlier types of ransomware, and it hit more than 300,000 people in more than 150 countries. It was worldwide. And the great thing about it is the vulnerability that it used was patched 2 months prior by Microsoft. So essentially for 2 months, every single one of those 300,000 people didn't apply the update. If they had just hit yes and restarted their computer, they would not have been vulnerable to WannaCry. There are a lot of options for antivirus and anti-malware software. It's part of Defense in Depth. It can't be your only source of protection, but I've provided a link to avcomparatives.org, and this is an independent lab that essentially tests all the antivirus solutions every month. So what they'll do is they will take, let's just say 30 computers that are all identical. They will expose them to the internet. They will click on stuff in an automated fashion, and then they will run the different anti-malware and antivirus software and see what percentage of the malware gets cleaned up by the antivirus solution. They will then post that information, and it will say something to the effect of Norton had a 96% success rate, Windows Defender had a 95% success rate, McAfee had a 92% success rate, kind of so you can see how close or how far apart some of the options are. In general, as long as you have a antivirus or anti-malware piece of software and you keep it updated, you should be feel pretty safe unless you actively go looking for links, shady links to click on. And just so we're all clear, the built-in one from Microsoft for free is good. Don't feel like you need to pay Norton money just for antivirus, anti-malware software. The built-in stuff is fine as long as you keep it updated. Previously, we had a class specifically going over how to use antivirus and anti-malware. If that's something you're interested in, you can always come by on Wednesday, or you can always make a request to Rebecca and we will redo that class for you. Because one of the things about this class is it's a pretty general class where you can kind of see each slide isn't getting an incredible amount of attention. And then it's almost to the point where each one of these slides has been a dedicated class we've done that goes way more in depth into all of these, kind of all of this information. Passwords. So here are, yes.
When you're sharing this, are you sharing this across PC and Macs? Is what you're saying is accurate for both either or machine?
In general, yeah. So the only difference is Mac has something other than Windows Defender. I guess it's Microsoft Security Essentials now, or it's just called Microsoft. I think it's just called Microsoft Security now. But obviously Apple doesn't have that. They have their own thing.
Okay.
In both cases, if you want a little bit more protection, I always recommend installing Malwarebytes, the free version. What the free version does is it is an application that sits on your computer. You run it whenever you feel like you want it to check things. The free version kind of doesn't automatically run all the time. It's just when you press the button, which is generally all anyone would need, at least for the price. All right, so passwords. Passwords, I think we've had multiple classes on passwords, and we've also had 2 different types of classes on passwords. Some negatives with passwords, as in what you shouldn't do for your passwords. You shouldn't use short passwords. Your passwords should be at least 12 characters long. as a rough statement. You shouldn't improperly store your passwords. Yes, this does mean you shouldn't have a sticky note with your password attached to your monitor. So you shouldn't store them improperly. You should be changing your passwords. The guidelines used to say you should change it like 4 times a year, and no one has time for that. So once a year, in my opinion, is more than efficient. With the caveat of, if you are involved in any sort of data breach, or a company is involved in any sort of data breach, you should just change that password regardless of your normal timetable. You shouldn't have an easy to guess password. When I was in college, there was a study done at Pitt University where they basically ran a password cracker on the student body to see what passwords they were using. And like 80% of the passwords were last name, jersey number of a famous player for the Steelers or the Penguins. It was absolutely ridiculous. So don't make it easy to guess. Also, don't use the same password. We briefly went over that. But basically, your password for Home Depot should not be the same password as your banking information. For your password, I know it's easier to remember, but please don't use dates, names, locations that are tied to you, just because it's easy to guess. And at the bottom, we have a link to haveibeenpwned.com. This is a site where you can type in your email account, and it'll tell you if it's been compromised or not. The caveat to that is, if you feel like you need to put your email address into that site, you should probably just change your password instead, just to be on the safe side. Strong passwords. This just kind of goes over it. 6 letters would take a computer 2 seconds to guess. 8 letters would take 5 seconds. 8 letters would take 22 minutes. And 8 letters with characters, special characters, so like exclamation mark, question mark, that sort of thing, would take 3 hours. As you add letters and numbers to that, it just gets increasingly difficult for a computer to figure it out. And we have a link here, how secure is my password? And we have a Notepad document. This is incredibly technical. So if we take this password and we put it in here, it would take a computer about 1,000 years to crack it. It's not really that complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 characters, right? Let's add an exclamation point to the end. 50 million years, hooray, we're safe. So it's really not that difficult to make a password that would be difficult for a computer to crack. The main thing is length. So if we take what a lot of people assume is a very secure password, right? This is probably difficult to remember, kind of hard to type, especially on a cell phone. Pop that bad boy in, 19 minutes.
Wow.
So the most important thing is just length. One of the processes that I like is just 4 random words. Apple, and you just add a number. Apple 1, circle, and I'm honestly just looking around my desk right now, and water. Apple, circle, water. I can probably remember this pretty easily, right? This isn't incredibly difficult to remember. Let's pop that bad boy in, and 500 quadrillion years. All of a sudden, we're super, super safe. And Apple, circle, water. Apple 1, circle 5, water, and I'm excited about it. Pretty easy to remember, pretty easy to type. And here is a tiny bit of levity that basically just goes over exactly what I just said. Does anyone have any questions about what makes a strong password?
What's that site URL you use to check a password that you're thinking of using?
HowSecureIsMyPassword.net, which is now owned by security.org/howsecureismypassword. I kept the link the same just because I like the old interface, but this is what it routes to. So security.org, howsecureismypassword. But it's always in the link that will be sent to you at the end of the class. All right. So, and the reason why you should potentially forget everything what I just said is password management. You should just use a password manager instead. In a later slide, I go over some of the options. The ones I generally recommend are Bitwarden if you don't want to pay money, or Proton if you don't want to pay money. And those two, again, if you want to use their paid versions. Generally, the paid versions of password managers will allow you to share passwords. The reason why this is nice is you can share your passwords, a small portion of them, with a spouse, significant other, family, friends. So things like Netflix password, you change it, they'll still be able to get the new password kind of thing. Or if you share an Amazon account, you update the password, they would still be able to access it with the password that has been updated in their password manager. The main reason why you would use a password manager, though, is you just don't even need to think about what your passwords are. You don't even need to know your passwords. I don't know my passwords. I just need to remember the master password to get into the password manager. And the password manager takes care of everything else. It will also do things like autofill if you want to have that turned on. So if you go to a website like Amazon and you go to log in, it can automatically put in your account information for you so you don't have to type things. All right, backup strategy. This is, again, kind of a subsection of staying safe. This is just in case your computer encounters a horrible fate or gets crippled by malware or ransomware or something of that nature. You want to have your data backed up. There are two kind of easy to remember rules. I prefer the 3-2-1 rule, but there's also the locks principle. The 3-2-1 rule is you want 3 copies of a file in 2 different places, and one of those places is offsite. What that means is if your home is devoured by a tornado because you live somewhere that gets tornadoes, the offsite copies of your files will be safe. Generally, this is now done just with cloud storage. The locks principle I don't like as much, mainly because it implies that you should make tons and tons of copies of things. And I find if people make tons and tons of copies of things, it's hard to keep track of what the current copy is or which version of the file you should be using. But either way, if you have more questions on it, we can definitely go over that at the end. So, how to be safe online? Let's talk about browsers. Your browser, as long as it's a newer one, which is pretty much any browser you use these days, has a lot of built-in security. It will alert you if you go to a known malicious website. It will alert you if a website is not valid because its certificate isn't correct. It will alert you if you're not using a secure website. it kind of has all of this built in. In addition, you can use some privacy forward browser extensions. I have a link on this page to a list of them. In general, if you don't want to think about it too much, I recommend just installing uBlock Origin on your browsers and kind of not worrying about all the other stuff. What uBlock Origin does is it blocks ads. Now, you may be wondering why we're blocking ads. The reason is anyone can pay for an ad. As soon as your browser renders the ad, so as soon as you see the ad, your computer has already gotten the information necessary to display that ad. What that means is if the ad is malicious, even if you don't click on it, it can still do bad things. But it also stops you from clicking on stuff that is in that like middle ground of malware versus just annoying, where if you go to a website, it may say, you know, click here to purchase, and that's an ad that takes you to a different website. And that is what uBlock Origin is good at stopping. If you've ever encountered while browsing like that full page thing that comes up and says something to the effect of, you know, Microsoft has scanned your computer and you have 10,000 malware programs on it and you're being actively hacked, and click here or call this number to receive help immediately. That is essentially because of an ad, and that's the stuff that uBlock Origin will stop. A lot of people talk about VPNs, and the question is, does a VPN help? And the answer is yes, but not really. So a VPN will help you protect your privacy. It will prevent others seeing what you are doing. And especially for being on like public Wi-Fi, it will stop someone else who is also at that Starbucks from being able to look at your computer. That's essentially what a VPN will help you with. A VPN will not help you prevent cookies, viruses, or malware. It won't protect against any emails you get. You're still at risk of clicking on things, essentially. So a VPN makes you a little bit safer, and especially in a public environment. Now, you may say to yourself, Tim, it seems like half of the stuff you're saying is don't use the library public computers. Right? Because it's on a public network and it's not a computer you own, and a lot of other people use it. So that's a good point. But what the library does to combat this is we have a pretty robust firewall that kind of stops a lot of the dangers you can experience online on the public network side of things. And as for the computers, anytime they are restarted, they completely wipe themselves of all information. So if you use a public computer and you want to be really secure, you sit down at it, specifically at the library. You sit down at the public computer, you hit restart, you wait the 20 seconds it takes to restart, you do whatever you want to do on it, you hit restart, and it will clear everything off of it that you have just done. The one thing to remember is it does clear everything. So if you have a document that you're editing on a public computer and you want to use it later, it will not be there because it just gets wiped. We've experienced that a couple of times where someone had an important document, they used the library computer to edit it, they then came back the next day looking for it, and it's just not there. So that's one of the ways that we kind of try to keep the public computers a little safer than a normal public computer would be. Any questions on a VPN or what the library is doing for its public network.
What does VPN stand for?
Virtual Private Network.
Thank you.
It essentially creates a tunnel between you and what you're looking at, so other people can't see inside it, is one way to think about it. All right. So we're in the business/options time. It's very exciting. Generally, I get more fanfare, but we will work with it. All right, so CIA triad, not that CIA. The CIA triad is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So this is kind of what you want to strive for. You want your data to be confidential. You want to stop unauthorized people from viewing it. You want all of your data to be protected and not be changed by outside influences, and you want it to be available. The next thing is defense in depth. Just think of it like an onion. We're going back to Shrek. And this is kind of the top-down look at each thing that needs to be secure in order for you to be safe. So we have the policy, procedures, and awareness. That is you. Physical access to a device. So this means if you want to be safe, you don't want to leave your computer somewhere where someone else can touch it. The network, that's the public network. That is what your computer is using to connect to the internet. Your computer itself needs to be updated and secure. That's with things like keeping your computer updated and also having updated antivirus or anti-malware protection on it. The application needs to be secure. So if you're using a bad application that isn't updated, that's bad. And then device. The next step is more of a business thing. Firewalls, intrusion, endpoint protection, network segmentation. Essentially, all this means is you want the stuff that that's between your computer and the world, you want that to be up to date as well. Some people ask, how can I be safer at home? And the answer is get a good firewall. So whenever you have Comcast or Consolidated, they will come with a modem or a router, and that offers some level of protection. But if you want to be more secure or have more control over the safety of your network at home, you can buy a firewall. In a later slide, we have a list of different firewalls you can get. But basically, a firewall will block something from connecting to your computer without you having to click a button. It just kind of saves you from things that you're not even aware of. IDS, IPS, again, this is more of a business thing, but it will basically see that something is happening on the network that you're attached to that shouldn't be happening, and it will stop it. So if an IPS or IDS gets a notification that something bad is happening, it will alert you. And in some cases, it will actually pull the offending file from the network or from your computer. But again, this is more of a business thing. EDR, this is expensive, not for public consumption. Network segmentation, all this means is when possible, you should have 2 networks at your house. You may wonder why. It's because the network it's because everyone has or some people will have a robot vacuum cleaner, or they'll have a smart fridge, or they'll have a smart toaster, whatever smart appliance thing. And basically you want to put that on a network that is separate from your computer, just to be a little bit more secure. this is generally pretty easy to do. You would just go into your device that controls your network. In most cases, it would be the router or modem that Consolidated or Comcast gives you. And you would just add a second network and make sure whenever you're setting up that smart light switch that you put it on your network 2 and your computer uses your network 1. Least privilege, again, this is a business thing, but basically if someone doesn't need to have access to something, they shouldn't have access to something. Strong passwords, we kind of went over this. And the short answer is use a password manager and then don't really worry about it. Patch management, we talked about this earlier, but basically, all of your operating systems, all of your software, all of your hardware, they'll get periodic security or firmware updates. You always want to run it. One example is Maersk. There was a computer that had a application that was bad at one of their offices. That issue then spread to all of their computers all around the world and caused $870 million worth of damage. And that was because one computer and one application weren't properly patched. All right, firewalls. Does anyone feel the need to buy a new firewall for their home to be more secure? All right. All right. So we will skip this little slide. There are cheap ones, but if you have any questions about it, feel free to come by Wednesday or ask Rebecca to ask me about it. IPS and IDS. These can require a little bit of technical know-how to set up. One of the easiest ways to get these is if you buy a firewall, some of them will have IPS and IDS built in. So if you don't want to think about it, the solution would be to buy a firewall that has that built in. Antivirus / anti-malware. So on the left-hand side, we have free-ish, and on the right-hand side, we have expensive-ish. So on the left-hand side, we have Windows Defender, which, as I said, it's that little blue shield icon that you see there. It comes with your Windows computer. It is free. It works great. It's what I use on some of my computers. And as long as you keep it up to date, good to go. Some antivirus and anti-malware have free versions. Kaspersky has one, Bitdefender has one, and Malwarebytes has one. The main negative with these free antivirus / anti-malware programs is they will remind you that you are not paying for it, and they will heavily encourage you every day to pay money, which may be more annoying than just using Windows Defender. That being said, like I said earlier, if you want an additional layer of protection, I encourage the free version of Malwarebytes. And you just have to learn to live with / ignore the messages saying, hey, do you want to activate your free trial? Or, hey, do you want to buy our product? Now, if you want to spend money, Norton 360 Deluxe is pretty good. Bitdefender Antivirus Plus is good. McAfee is pretty good. ESET is pretty good. And Sophos is pretty good. The main reason why you want to pay is the management it gives you. So what I mean by that is if you have 3 computers in your house, but you really only primarily use one, sometimes it can be worth it to pay for antivirus because it will allow you from your computer, it will allow you to make sure that the other two computers are up to date, secure, and they don't have anything on them. So instead of, going and grabbing your significant other's computer to run a scan, you can just do it from your computer and they don't even ever have to know, kind of thing. So it's more of a ease of use for multiple devices is the main reason why I would recommend paying for an antivirus or anti-malware program. And once again, at the bottom of this slide, there is a link to AV Comparatives, which we had briefly talked about it before, is the site that kind of goes through and ranks all of them on a monthly basis. Do we have any questions on antivirus or anti-malware?
I have a question. Somebody recommended AVG as an antivirus.
Yeah, so AVG was, let's see, about a decade ago, I think it was my favorite one. It's perfectly good. My only gripe with AVG and why it doesn't make this list is, in my experience, it's a little more hungry than some of the alternatives. And what I mean by that is it just uses more of your computer more often than the ones we have listed here. So it's great, but it just runs a lot.
Oh,
So if you have like 5 applications open, you may notice that they're kind of slow if AVG is doing its thing, and it just does its thing more often. Cool.
Thank you. I have another question that doesn't have to do with that
Perfect.
at the end.
Yep. You can do it now. You can ask it now.
So when you were saying, make sure you close out when you're like using your emails.
Yep.
When you log off. Well, when you use your phone and you open up, you go to the mail and you open it up and you read an email, whatever. When you close it, does that log you out?
Yeah. So great question.
Okay,
Yeah, good question.
Phones are like a kind of a different thing. So in general, the logging out advice is for devices that other people may have access to. So it's mostly important in a business sense. So like a computer in an office or a public computer. Your personal phone, if you lost it, then that's an issue. But theoretically, someone has to unlock your phone with your face in order to get into it. So it's pretty secure, right? So as soon as my phone, I'm done with my email, I just, press the power button and it locks it. So I'm pretty safe with that because I would then need to unlock my phone in order to gain access to my email again. So like if you're at a public place, like a coffee shop, and you have your laptop with you and you have it open before you, go to the bathroom or something like that, I would just lock your computer. And that kind of takes care of the nitty gritty of that complication.
Yeah, good question.
All right, network segmentation. I didn't see very many eyebrows raised the last time I brought this up. So if you're really interested in it, ask me at the end. Least privilege. Again, this is more of a business thing. Feel free to ask me about it. Strong passwords, password manager, exciting slide. So on the left-hand side, we have free-ish. And on the right-hand side, we have moderately priced-ish. For free-ish, we have Bitwarden, which is great. it's the icon you see in the bottom left. It's online. You can access it from your phone and your computer. So you're not really tied down. The next option on the list is KeePass. KeePass is absolutely fantastic, but it is not online. So what that means is if you have KeePass on your computer, you then do not have KeePass on your phone. So really secure because your phone can't even have your passwords. Firefox, Chrome, Edge, all of these things will offer kind of to store your passwords for you. That is technically a password manager. I do not like them as much as the dedicated password managers like Bitwarden, though. We have Apple Keychain, which is Apple's version. Apple also recently came out with a more full-fledged password manager that the name is escaping me at this moment, but that one's pretty good. And there's also Proton Pass on the free-ish side. So specifically for free-ish, what I recommend is Bitwarden or Proton Pass. And the reason to pay for Bitwarden or Proton Pass is if you want to share your passwords with a family member or kind of anyone else. You can create little buckets of shared passwords, and then both people can interact with them if you need to share accounts for any reason. Moderately priced, some good ones are 1Password, Dashlane, RoboForm, LastPass. The reason why these are moderately priced and Bitwarden and Proton Pass aren't is because, in my opinion, their free versions are not good. So the price for the moderately priced ones, and if you were to pay for Bitwarden and Proton Pass, are very similar. It's kind of a personal preference thing at that point. Do we have any questions on password managers?
I do. So what's keeping like one of these applications from getting hacked? Are they just like really protected, or you are putting a lot of trust in them to keep your info safe?
Yeah, so great question. The good ones, which if I've done my research, which I generally do, these are all independently audited, which means that an independent security company basically checks to make sure that they're using best practices. And what that means is they don't have any plain text passwords or anything like that laying around. And essentially what it means is even if someone were to hack into 1Password or something, all of your passwords are still heavily encrypted, which essentially means that as long as they are stored properly in their heavily encrypted form, not even the password manager themselves can gain access to your passwords. The only way to gain access to your passwords is with your master passphrase. That is also the reason why you really need to memorize somehow your master passphrase for a password manager, because if you forget it, you essentially, if you forget it and are unable to log into your password manager, you essentially have lost all of your passwords.
Thank you.
So it's kind of like putting all of your eggs in one basket, a super heavily secured, fantastic basket. But if you forget how to access it, then it's also protecting itself from you. Whenever you set up a password manager, you will generally be able to download a recovery key. And this is a file or a long string of letters and numbers or words that will allow you for some reason, if you forget your master password, it will also allow you back into your account. The other reason, and it's kind of morbid, but the other reason I kind of like password managers is for estate planning, where everyone has tens, dozens, hundreds of passwords. And if someone needs to access your banking account information or to pay a bill or something of that nature, just from an estate planning sense, they will have access to see where are all of your like bills coming from, what are all the services you've signed up for, stuff like that. So like you'll have the ability to pay your water bill, your electricity bill, all of that stuff, and they don't have to fight with those companies to gain access to that account.
Really good point.
Yep. Slightly morbid, kind of important.
Important.
All right, patch management. On the left-hand side, under free-ish, we have Just Do It and Seriously. If you want to pay money, you can use something like Nanite or PDQ. For this slide, I generally say ignore the right-hand side and just do it by yourself manually for free. It will alert you, it will let you know, just, hit the restart of your computer, within a day or so of seeing the message and be good to go. Training. So if I have not talked long enough for you and you want even more information, we have this link. So this is from KnowBe4, which is a company we've previously talked about. They're the ones that kind of started doing phishing tests for businesses. And there is a cybersecurity awareness weekly training planner, which basically you can click on, and then there will be individual like learning sections that you can click on at your own pace to learn more. Questions. And just so you can see what it looks like. Just gonna do. This is what that training looks like. You're generally supposed to space it out over the course of the month, but there's a article or a module on think before you click, links and attachments, safe web surfing. It's a little game, infographics, all this stuff. And they even have like a little show that they put on called The Inside Man. All this is good. KnowBe4. So if you want to learn more at your own pace, I highly recommend using that link. All right, any questions on anything we discussed? And I fully am aware we did just slam through 40 slides. So a lot of information was thrown at you. Any questions on anything that we talked about? Cool. I have fried everyone's brain.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yep. And anything you want to learn more in depth, just let Rebecca know. In the past, one of the, I'd like to say more popular classes we did was specifically on password managers, partially because I love them so much. People requested kind of exactly how to get started using one of them. And we can do something like that in the future where we kind of start to finish, how do you set that up? We've done a similar thing with VPNs, firewalls, all that stuff. So any requests like that, let Rebecca know. And otherwise, Wednesdays, 12 to 1.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.